Welcome to this week's episode of the Campfire Series podcast. I'm your host, Logan Soforenko. We have a very special guest joining us today, former Cosette in the Les Misérables national tour. Please welcome Jillian Butler.
I'm Jillian Butler, and I am an actress. I am from the Bay Area, California, and I went to a public high school and then went to the Boston Conservatory for musical theater. And I did 4 years there. Amazing program, amazing time there at BOCO. And then I moved to New York in the late summer of 2015 and was there for about 6 months. And then I got my first national tour, which was Cinderella, and I was an ensemble member in that. And that kind of launched my last 4 years of being a working actress on 3 different national tours. So from Cinderella, I had about 5 days between that, and then I joined the national tour of Wicked as the Nessa and Glinda understudy. And then from there, I was there for about a year and a half, and then I joined the national tour of Les Misérables as Cosette. So that is a long version of my resume per se, but I guess it just is kind of crazy that I could say I've been touring for 4 years and I miss it every day.
So let's kind of work through the journey. You study at the Boston Conservatory of Music. What was that like, and how did that training affect you, and how did you use it in your professional, I guess, touring life?
Yeah, those 4 years were very eye-opening and transformative, just in the sense that it's such an intense training program with dance, acting, and music. I mean, we were just always doing something, and I think the training there really prepares you as a well-rounded artist and to go into any audition room when you go to New York for the first time or your first professional audition. I was so well prepared, and it's really a make your own program too. So I was part of a lot of different aspects of their program, and I did a lot of outreach programs with something we called the Conservatory Cabaret, which I think just helped give you perspective. We went to like nursing homes and battered women shelters and performed there, which was a very big part of my experience there. Just kind of gave you perspective and gave you a different set of tools to take out with you into the world and as a professional. So I think also with that school, I chose it because they had a showcase and in front of directors at the end of my senior year, which really helped launch then the next step for myself as a professional in the arts.
How did you get cast in the Les Misérables tour?
Oh boy. So I guess it kind of ties into my other transitions from Cinderella to Wicked, and then from Wicked to Les Mis, because with both Wicked and Les Mis, I sent in an initial self-tape, which is, I think, reflecting back on that now, which our whole world now is kind of turned to digital and media and self-tapes and putting yourself out on the internet. That's kind of the way we're all connecting now. So it's kind of funny that everything was initially launched from a self-tape for me. And I just kind of laugh at it because I did not consider myself very good at technology or any sort of self-tapes in that sense, but now it's kind of the norm. So I was able to send in a self-tape and then had a round of auditions from that point, about 5 auditions after that.
And then what was the reaction when you found out that you booked it? Was it a phone call? Was it, leaving the casting room like, oh, actually, by the way, can you play Cosette in the national tour of Les Mis?
Oh man, that would have been crazy. That audition in particular was so interesting for me because I was in Boston with Wicked, and I had a text from our stage manager in Wicked that asking if I could go on for Glinda that night, the night after, because they already knew that the Glinda was going to be out, and then the other understudy was out of town. So I knew I had to go into New York from Boston for my final callback for Cosette. And I was like, what do I do? So I went to the final callback, and I remember having this feeling. It was just a very positive energy. There's those certain auditions where you know you do all you can do, and you put your best foot forward, and you just have a good feeling that no matter what happens, I really did my best. I showed my best self, and I feel good about that. And that's the best feeling you can have when leaving an audition. And then it was actually a chemistry test with the Marius, who was already cast. So that was really interesting too, and that was also really fun and had good energy in there too. And then I remember I hopped right on the plane back to Boston to go play Glinda that night at the Boston Opera House. So that was kind of crazy. And then about a week later, I had to wait for 4th of July weekend. And I was just like, when are we going to find out? Yes or no? And then I got a call when I was in Boston that I was going to be playing Cosette. And it was this rush of excitement, and then this immediate drop of, oh no, I actually have to do it. And just like all of the different feelings of happiness, excitement, nerves, scared. But it was definitely an adrenaline rush and a very, very good phone call. And it's like when you have so many auditions, it's very rewarding to feel that it paid off.
When you mentioned the what do you call it, the chemistry test with but was it Joshua at the time?
Yes,
H-
yes, it was.
what was it like going on tour with him and having him as your Marius and just telling that story with him?
Yeah, it was so funny because I already knew who he was, since I knew going into the final chemistry test that he was already he already had the job for Marius. So my agent actually sent me a video that was on the internet of him at Carnegie. He went to school at Carnegie, and was like, "Hey, this is the Marius, just so you know, like fake it till you make it," which is hilarious looking back. So I saw him come in, and I knew who he was, and he had his headphones in, was like in the zone, doing whatever he was doing. And after the audition, I was like, hey, maybe we'll see each other at the first rehearsal, maybe we won't. So in the first day of rehearsal, he was like, hey, you made it. I was like, yeah, hey. So he was really fun to work with, just because he's such a intricate actor. And if you've seen our production of his on tour, his Marius is very different, just because it's very grounded uh, in who he is as a person, which is very charming and charismatic. So I think his Marius stands out in that way. That it was very fun to play with him and work with him in that sense, because we brought our own kind of contemporary take on this classical piece that everyone knows and loves, which I think brought a new energy to the show as well. And it was just really fun to get to do the scene with him and work with him.
When it comes to touring across America, you've been on a couple national tours. What are some cities that stick out to you, and some theaters that you just fell in love with, performing? Because unfortunately, with touring, you're not settling for a while. You're on the go constantly. So what's some cities that stick out to you?
Yeah. Um, right off the top of my head, I think of the Academy of Music in Philadelphia. That theater is just absolutely incredible to look out, and it's the sound in that house too. The sound quality, it's just, you just want to sing. And especially doing Les Mis there one day more, I remember the sound check and that first night when we did it in Philly, it was just like, whoa, this is amazing. So that theater is really great. um, and just speaking of cities too, I randomly really like the smaller cities. I loved Fayetteville, Arkansas. I loved Greenville. um, and those are really surprising, because I think what was so great about touring is we got to bring Broadway shows and theater to small towns where they can't get to New York or get to the bigger cities easily. So I actually found that the smaller cities were almost even more magical in that sense, and responsive in a different way, and almost more grateful that we were there to tell the story. And that was really awesome getting to tour in that sense.
When it comes to playing at different houses, how does the warming up and the adjusting to each venue go? Especially when like there's some theaters that are super big, some that are outdoors, some that are really small.
That's a great question. And that was really one of probably the biggest challenges of touring, especially with Les Mis. We toured and we changed cities almost every week. So every Tuesday after a long travel day on Monday, we were sound checking in a brand new house with completely different acoustics, a completely different sound. And thankfully we have a great sound team there, and they would mix us and try to get us to sound the same in every venue. But what was hard is every theater different, so the sound would bounce back, and sometimes you couldn't really hear the same. So that was always an adjustment. But I'm really grateful that I was able to experience that, because you really get used to singing anywhere and with any sort of sound, with any sort of reverb. So that was really a good learning experience too. But it's definitely kind of crazy that every single week we're bringing this massive show with this massive, I mean, the whole show is sung, as I don't know if anyone knows Les Misérables, it's all sung. So that was always kind of a challenge, but took a challenge, and it was good to adapt to each theater.
What was press like before you guys even went out on tour? What was also going to each city? Was there news visits like for news stations? Uh, was there people coming to the show and with papers and writing all that stuff? What was press like for Les Mis tour?
Yeah, I didn't do too much press. Our Valjean Nick Cartel did a lot of the press, and he is amazing at it. And I think you interviewed him as well, right, Nick? Yeah. So I learned a lot just from listening to his interviews, and he is, again, he's the best, and he's so good at that. But we had a little bit of press in Providence, where we teched and then launched the tour. So that was kind of my biggest area of press. And then we had a big press event when we played the Pantages in Los Angeles, which was really exciting for all of us, because a lot of us had still been with the show from the beginning. So that was almost 2 years in. So it was kind of like an exciting moment for us to get to celebrate each other and celebrate the show with a red carpet. And I remember Los Angeles was a very fun press night for everyone.
Well, as a audience member myself, I want to because I actually have you. I told this to Nick as well, but the show was tremendous. I know it was last May, but it was so much fun, and you guys were so good. And there's the poster. So just
I know, I saw the poster. I was like, how perfect.
well, kudos to absolutely. So let's talk about obviously performing 8 times a week is challenging, but also doing it on the road. What are some things that you do, or things that you did on the tour to keep yourself mentally strong and physically strong, and also just to find a good balance to have time to yourself?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me, with Cosette, it was a very different experience than when I was performing 8 times a week in Wicked. And I think with Cosette, what's so challenging about her is my stage time is actually quite limited. So the challenge for me was making sure I was warmed up enough for the last 10 minutes of Act One to do the Rue Plumet Heart Full of Love sequence, and then just like pop up and float a high note that everyone's expecting. So for me, that was the hardest part, was learning how to not over warm up and to trust myself enough to know that I've done the work. I know that I have trained and have the abilities to do this. It was more of a mental game to get prepared to play Cosette. And then she does not sing until like the last 10 minutes of Act Two, where then she comes out and floats a high C. So as a soprano, and against someone who does overthink, and I think learning to balance trusting myself, and that's with anything, I think with any actor, just knowing at the end of the day, even on the hard days or when maybe you're not feeling the best, you just have to trust the sound is there, and that you have the training and the ability to lean back on that trust. So that was kind of the hardest thing, I think, performing Cosette 8 times a week, was not being on stage with everyone in the barricade. And it's kind of ironic, because I think people be like, oh, it's such like a laid back track or so easy that you get all this rest time, and they call it the princess track. But it was actually very challenging because I had to make sure I was ready to go on for the time I did have on stage, and really not overthink it in that sense. So I hope that answers.
Oh, don't worry. What were some things that you did as a warm up and some warm up tools that you did to get your voice ready?
Yeah, I had just like a few warm ups that I would do, and I would really try to warm up with a straw. Became my big thing. So you put a straw in water. I actually have this, and you just kind of, this is coffee. So hey, either one. And you would just blow on the straw and do like a little and that takes the pressure off your chords, but you're allowed to still phonate, but it doesn't slam your chords together. It actually works very effectively in the same way as a warm up, but you're not putting the stress on your vocal cords, and you can do it in any place, because sometimes the dressing rooms in every city would be really close together and close to the stage, so you couldn't really warm up crazily. But I always would find a stairwell, or I would go into the conductor's room. He usually had his own room, and during ABC Cafe, I would go through about some stretches and do go through a little bit of Heart Full of Love at the end and do like the high note a few times just to get it. But I think the biggest thing I learned was not overthinking it again, especially with something like Cosette. They actually call it Cosette syndrome. I remember for my first resident director, he was like, it's just Cosette syndrome. Every Cosette goes through this because you're not on stage with everyone all the time. Then you're just expected to come on and just puff up these high notes that can seem intimidating because you're not on stage all the time and actively singing with everyone. But also to say, in the first part of the show, I Am a Lovely Lady, and in all the stuff with the factory. So that was a secret warm up that kind of helped my body get into the show. And so that was actually really nice to have that with everyone and to kind of get used to the stage before I came out.
Were there any goosebumps at the end of Act One performing One Day More? Because that's in my opinion, that's the showstopper. What was that like as a performer? Being in that number and also hearing it and being a part of it as well.
I have chills right now. I really do. It is the best, one of the best, I think the best Act One finale in any musical. When you hear the magic notes, that is what we call them. And I remember the first time I came out on the balcony in Providence, it's just magical. You can't explain it. And the people love that number. So it was just thrilling. And I just love that you get to hear the subconscious thoughts of what every character is going through as well, the principal characters. So that part of the new one come together powerful, and it's just the best music too, and the crowds go crazy before we even finish the song, so it's amazing.
Speaking of the crowds going crazy, I remember especially I've heard a lot of the actors say that in LA, the very first note of the show, right when the spotlight goes on the conductor, everyone goes crazy. So is that kind of when you're backstage? Is that when you are getting excited, or is that when like, oh, I kind of gotta kick it into gear a little bit and get warmed up?
Yeah, for me, I would be backstage in my dressing room still probably with whoever the Eponine was. I had 3 amazing Eponines during my time in Les Mis, and it was kind of like, okay, here we go. But what was really cool is sometimes you could hear the audience explode. I know there were certain cities where they would just be like, yes, like, because once you're on this journey and you start the show, there's no getting off that marathon there. So even for the audience, so I definitely miss hearing the downbeat every day.
Before we wrap up here, what's some advice you can give to young actors, not only just in college but also in high school, in elementary, middle? What's some advice you can give?
Yeah, Let me think. The biggest advice I think I have and would like to tell my younger self, and still now, is don't compare yourself to anyone. I think um, also the word comparison can have like a negative connotation. I think you can admire and thrive to be like someone that you admire and uh, someone's capabilities, but just knowing that really the only competition in this business, I think, is with yourself, and just knowing, changing the perspective of wanting to better yourself as a performer, especially with this time, and just always be striving to be a better version of yourself and admire someone that you hope to be with, but never compare yourself to their skills, because there really is only you. And that may seem very simple, but it is very powerful when you implement it in your life and as an artist. And at the same time, also just be very kind to yourself along the way, because we can be our biggest critic in that sense. And that kind of goes hand in hand. So I would say that, with also perseverance and just keep training, working hard, always try to grow your skills, and practice gratitude. And that's another very simple thing, but having that perspective and being grateful each day that you do get to work on your craft and mold that part of yourself, I think is a big lesson that everyone can take away. But definitely don't compare yourself, because that can be a recipe for a lot of other negative things that you don't need to get on the way.
But last thing, what are some what's a highlight? I guess we could say there's a lot of stuff probably on your mind, like with all the tours you've been in. But what's a highlight from the Les Mis tour that just sticks in your brain? I know you mentioned earlier that you love performing in the small cities, bringing the show to people who are, cities that can't get to, New York, or where it's not Chicago or L.A. or those big ones. What are a moment that's stuck in your brain?
There was a little girl at the stage door, and she just said to me, "I want to be like you, and I want to play little Cosette." And she was about 7, I think, and had her little ballet slippers on. And just those moments, I think the fans of Les Mis are worth mentioning, because they are just incredible, and the show has such a huge following, and for good reason. And I think they want to hear the story too. And some of my favorite moments were just at the end of the show, getting to meet everyone, even on my most tired days. Just the energy and how grateful they were that we were there, is something I'll always remember. And I think too, this is the very beginning of the tour, when I got to meet the writers of the show, and they knocked on our door after the show, Claude Michel and Alan Wheel, and they just knocked on our door and were like, "Hello." Like they just had seen the show. I mean, they said something other than hello, but to me, that's all I heard. I was like, "Hello." And I remember what they did say to me. I said, "Oh, this is my first time doing the show." They're like, "This is your first musical ever?" Like, they thought I was saying, "This is my first musical ever." And I was like, "Oh, no, 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 it's just my first time ever doing Les Mis, and I'm so grateful for what you've written." And so that was a very, very cool experience. I will never forget that. And we also had a music rehearsal with them in a small closet room in Providence. And I still have that voice memo. And I should actually listen back to it, because just the things that Claude Michel was saying about the music that he wrote is something I will always cherish. And he said to the Marius, "Josh, I want to hear you smile when I listen to you sing. I want to hear you smile." So that's something I always will carry with me. Um, you always want to hear what someone is singing and hear what they're feeling, even when you close your eyes. So sorry, I went off on a tangent, but those are some cool, some cool experiences with the show.
No, don't worry. The lot of stories. Love hearing them,
I
especially.
haven't talked about Les Mis too in a while, so it feels nice to reflect.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to come on. I really appreciate it. Uh, I wish we could, talk for hours. I have so many questions, but you never know. Part two, maybe.
Hey, maybe, yeah, I would love to. I was listening to some of your other podcasts, or the other ones you had on, and I really, really like what you're doing, and I think it's really important for and a great platform for other artists and young artists to have someone like you who's doing this. So I think it's really awesome what you're doing, and yeah, just keep, it's really, really great. So thanks for having me too.
I really appreciate that. I really do.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let you know when the episode drops, but in the meantime, take care of yourself. Welcome to California. Enjoy the weather,
Thank
but
you.
be smart. Don't go to the beach. I don't recommend going. Wait, where are you in California?
I'm about an hour outside of San Francisco. So
Okay, so you're up
I
north.
am, yeah, so I'm just going to be here with my dogs and my iced coffee and chilling and reading and singing some songs to my dogs. So,
You have no idea how much I miss Northern California. My mom's from Sacramento, so we go up there a lot.
oh, nice.
But
Yeah, I love it. I love it here.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
enjoy it. Welcome back. And stay safe. And hopefully we can get out of this. I know the theater community is gonna get out of this stronger than ever.
Yes.
Yeah. So really
Yeah,
appreciate you
we will
coming
be
on.
back.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It was nice meeting you as well.
You too. Have a good one.
You as well. Take care.
Okay. Bye.